At Thanksgiving dinner, my sister accidentally found out that I have $12 million in savings, and now my entire family is demanding that I hand it over to her because they believe she deserves it more and that I don't need that kind of money. I still remember that Thanksgiving night like it happened yesterday. The house was glowing with laughter, the kind that fills every corner and makes you feel like everything's okay in the world. The smell of roasted turkey, mashed potatoes, and cinnamon pie wrapped around me like home. My mom was fussing over the gravy, my dad was making those same old jokes he's told for years, and my sister Jenna was bragging about her new job. For a while, it felt perfect, you know? Like maybe, after everything, we could just be a normal family for one night. But life doesn't really work like that. It takes one tiny moment, one careless slip, to destroy the illusion of peace you thought you had. I didn't see it coming. I wasn't prepared. I was just sitting there, smiling, passing the cranberry sauce, when my phone buzzed on the table. I didn't think much of it. But Jenna, always curious, leaned over to peek at my screen, like she always did when we were kids. Her eyes froze. Her smile faded. Then, in this loud, almost trembling voice, she blurted out, "Wait, did I just see $12 million in your account?" It was like someone hit pause on life. Every sound disappeared. Fork stopped midair, my mom's hand froze above the serving dish, and my dad's head turned so fast I thought he'd hurt himself. My heart dropped. In that 1 second, I knew I was in trouble. The air in the room shifted. It wasn't warm anymore. It felt cold, sharp, heavy. I tried to laugh it off, to make it seem like nothing, but I could already feel their eyes on me, measuring me, judging me, like they were seeing me for the first time. And not as family. As money. I never meant to hide the money. It just never felt like something I needed to announce. I wasn't some lottery winner or some lucky guy who stumbled into wealth overnight. I earned it. Every single dollar came from years of grinding, working jobs that chewed me up, saving when everyone else was spending, investing when people called me crazy. There were nights I skipped dinner to pay bills, mornings I left before sunrise just to make it to 2 jobs back to back. Nobody saw that part. Not my parents, not Jenna, not anyone. They only saw the version of me that finally made it. But back then, they didn't believe in me. I remember when I told Jenna I wanted to start investing instead of spending on parties and gadgets like everyone else. She laughed in my face. You can't even keep a job for a year." Those words burned. But instead of arguing, I stayed quiet. I learned. I studied. I made mistakes. I lost money. I cried more times than I'll ever admit. But slowly, things started working. One smart move led to another. And over time, the numbers began to grow. I went from barely surviving to being comfortable. Then comfortable became successful. Then, before I knew it, successful became wealthy. But none of it felt real until that Thanksgiving when Jenna's voice echoed through the room, exposing what I'd kept private for so long. I didn't hide it out of pride. I hid it out of fear. Because deep down, I knew what money does to people. I'd seen it ruin friendships, break families, turn love into envy. And in that moment, as everyone's shocked faces turned toward me, I realized that maybe I'd been right to stay silent all along. It all happened so fast, I didn't even have a second to process it. 1 minute, we were laughing about Jenna's overcooked stuffing, and the next, my life was being ripped open in front of everyone. My phone had buzzed on the table, just a simple banking notification, one I didn't think twice about. But Jenna's curiosity has always been her downfall. She leaned in, pretending to look at something else, and then her eyes locked onto the screen. I saw her pupils dilate, her jaw drop just slightly. She blinked once, twice, then shouted louder than she needed to, "Oh my God, is that $12 million? For a few seconds, I thought she was joking, maybe reading something wrong. But then the whole table fell silent. The kind of silence that doesn't feel like peace, it feels like judgment. My mom's fork froze halfway to her mouth. My dad looked at me like I'd just confessed to a crime. My little cousins even stopped giggling. And Jenna, she just sat there staring at me, her mouth open in disbelief, like she'd just found buried treasure. I could feel my heart hammering against my ribs. My palms went cold. I tried to laugh it off, to say it wasn't what she thought, but my voice cracked. It's complicated," I muttered, but no one heard the rest because they were already whispering, exchanging looks, eyes filled with questions and something else, greed. I felt exposed, cornered, like prey surrounded by people who were suddenly strangers. My dad finally spoke, his voice sharp. "Is that true?" I nodded. "Barely." The air grew heavier. My mom whispered something under her breath. And right then, I knew Thanksgiving was over. That one glance at my phone had just destroyed everything that used to feel like home. My mom was the first one to speak, her voice trembling but laced with disbelief. 12 million? You're joking, right? She looked at me like she was waiting for me to laugh and say it was some kind of mistake. But I didn't. I just sat there, frozen, trying to find the right words that wouldn't make things worse. "Yeah, it's real," I finally admitted, and the second those words left my mouth, I wished I could take them back. My dad leaned forward, eyebrows furrowed, eyes dark. "How? When? What do you mean it's real? Where did it come from?" His voice was sharp, demanding, the kind of tone that didn't ask questions, it accused. I tried to stay calm, to explain that it wasn't anything shady, that it was years of hard work, good decisions, and a bit of luck. But before I could even finish, my mom cut in. "Why didn't you tell us? Why keep something like this a secret?" And that's when I realized I was being interrogated, not congratulated. They weren't proud or happy, they were angry. Jenna crossed her arms, her expression unreadable at first, but then a slow, knowing smirk spread across her face. "So, all this time, you've been sitting on millions while we've been struggling," she said, her tone dripping with bitterness. The room grew hotter, the air thicker. I felt like I couldn't breathe. I tried to defend myself, saying it wasn't about hiding, it was just personal, private, but it didn't matter. The look in their eyes had already changed. The warmth, the laughter, the love, all of it was gone. Now, I was something else to them. Not a son, not a brother. Just a man with money. And I could feel that shift like a knife twisting slowly in my chest. I tried to explain myself, to tell them that the money didn't fall into my lap overnight, that it took years of sleepless nights, endless risks, and quiet sacrifices. But the more I talked, the less they seemed to care. My words bounced off the walls like they were meaningless. All they could see was the number Jenna had screamed out loud, 12 million. I told them about the failed startups, the loans I paid off on my own, the times I couldn't even afford proper meals. I thought maybe they'd understand, maybe they'd see that this wasn't luck, it was pain, persistence, and pure willpower. But instead, Jenna let out this little laugh, sharp and cold. "Well," she said, leaning back in her chair like she'd just discovered a secret she could use, "I guess I know who's paying for my new house." She smiled like it was a joke, but her eyes told a different story. She meant every word. My mom giggled nervously, maybe trying to ease the tension, but my dad didn't even try to hide the approval in his expression. That was the moment the energy shifted completely. They didn't see my success as something to be proud of. They saw it as an opportunity. I felt my stomach twist. It was like I had just been moved from family to resource in their minds. I wanted to shout, to tell them it wasn't like that I wasn't some walking ATM. But I just sat there in stunned silence while the people I loved most started planning how to spend money that wasn't theirs. The worst part was the realization settling in the back of my mind. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This was greed, raw and unashamed, and it had just made itself at home at our Thanksgiving table. Everyone laughed at Jenna's comment, but not in a light-hearted way. It was that kind of uneasy laughter people use when they're testing a boundary but pretending it's all in fun. My stomach nodded. I managed to force a small smile, hoping to shift the conversation away, but then my mom said something that made my entire body freeze. "Honestly, she deserves it more than you," she said, almost casually, as if she hadn't just shattered something deep inside me. "You've always been selfish." The word hit me harder than I could have ever expected. Selfish. I replayed it in my head over and over, my heartbeat pounding in my ears. I'd spent years sacrificing for this family. I helped my dad pay off his medical bills when his insurance didn't cover everything. I bought Mom new appliances when hers broke, even when I couldn't afford it at the time. And Jenna, Jenna, when she was drowning in student loans, I sent her money, no questions asked. I didn't ask for credit, I didn't expect repayment. I just wanted to help. Because that's what family does, right? But apparently, none of that mattered. My mom looked at me like I was some kind of hoarder of blessings, someone undeserving of what I'd built. "You don't even need all that money," she continued. You live alone. You don't have a family to feed. I wanted to speak, to defend myself, but my throat burned and the words wouldn't come. My dad didn't say anything, just nodded slightly in agreement, like he'd been waiting for someone to finally say it out loud. My chest felt tight, my eyes stung, but I stayed quiet. That's when it really sank in. No matter what I did, no matter how much I gave, in their eyes, I'd never be enough. I laughed, but it wasn't because anything was funny. It was the kind of laugh that slips out when disbelief becomes too heavy to hold in. You think I owe her my life savings because she deserves it more? I said, my voice sharper than I intended. The room went completely silent for a moment, the kind of silence that buzzes in your ears. Then my dad slammed his fork down on the table so hard it made everyone jump. "Watch your tone," he barked. His face was red, his jaw tight, the same expression he used to get when I was a kid and dared to talk back. "Your sister has been through more than you'll ever understand. She's struggled, she's got a family, kids to raise. You have more than enough. Don't be selfish." That word again, selfish. It burned hotter this time. I clenched my fists under the table, trying to keep my composure, but my voice cracked when I spoke. "You think my hard work means I owe everyone else something? You think I don't deserve to enjoy what I've earned just because I don't have kids?" My mom gasped, like I'd just said something cruel. "Don't talk to your father like that," she snapped. "We are just asking you to be kind." Kind. That's what they called it. But it wasn't kindness they were asking for. It was surrender. It was giving up everything I'd built just to make them feel entitled. I looked at Jenna, hoping she'd say something to calm things down, maybe tell them to stop. But she didn't. She just stared at me with this smug, almost triumphant look, like she'd finally gotten what she wanted. Me on the defensive, everyone against me. And in that moment, I realized this wasn't a misunderstanding. It was war, and I was already losing. Jenna leaned back in her chair, crossing her arms with that same smug grin that made my blood boil. "You don't get it, do you?" she said, her tone dripping with false innocence. "I've got kids, bills, a mortgage. You sit around in your fancy apartment, traveling, buying gadgets, living like a king while I'm scraping by. Don't you think it's fair to help your own family?" I stared at her, stunned. "Help?" I repeated, my voice shaking. "You mean give you everything I work for?" She rolled her eyes. "Oh, please. Don't act like you're some kind of martyr. You don't even need that much money. You'll never spend it all." My dad nodded along, muttering, "She's right. What's the point of hoarding it when your sister's struggling?" My chest tightened, anger bubbling under my skin. "Hoarding?" I repeated, trying to keep my composure. "You call it hoarding because it's mine? I've helped you all before, when Jenna needed rent, when Mom's car broke down, when Dad's surgery bills came in. Did I ever hesitate?" Mom looked away, her lips pressed together, but Jenna scoffed. "Yeah, and we appreciated it. But this is different. You've got more than enough. You should share." That word, share, sounded like a command, not a request. I took a deep breath, my voice trembling as I said, "This isn't about sharing. It's about entitlement. You think because we share blood, you're owed my success. But you didn't build this. You didn't earn it." For a second, there was silence. Then Jenna slammed her hand on the table, her eyes blazing. "You're unbelievable. You think money makes you better than us." I stared back at her, my heart pounding. "No," I said quietly. "But it's the reason you're all suddenly acting like I'm not one of you anymore." The silence that followed my words was suffocating, like the air itself had turned heavy. My mom shook her head slowly, disappointment written all over her face. "You've changed," she whispered, like she was talking to a stranger. "Ever since you started making money, you're not the same sweet boy you used to be." I felt something inside me break. "No, Mom," I said softly but firmly. "I haven't changed. You have. You all have. The only thing different now is that you know the number in my bank account." My dad scoffed and muttered, "Listen to him. Acting like a victim when he's sitting on a fortune." Jenna leaned forward, resting her elbows on the table, her tone mockingly calm. "You think we are the bad guys here? We are just asking for help. That's what family does." I looked her dead in the eyes. "No, Jenna. Family asks, They don't demand. And they definitely don't make you feel guilty for working hard. Her lips tightened into a thin line, her voice rising. You've always been selfish, even as a kid. You got the best of everything, and now you're just proving that you never cared about anyone but yourself. The words hit hard, sharper than I expected. I swallowed hard, trying to keep my composure. You really think that? After everything I've done for you? She didn't answer. No one did. The tension sat thick between us, and for the first time, I felt like a stranger in my own family. I looked around the table. These were the people who were supposed to love me unconditionally, but all I saw were eyes filled with resentment, jealousy, and greed. I pushed my chair back slowly, my heart pounding. I realized I wasn't just defending my money, I was fighting for my dignity. My chair scraped against the floor as I stood up, the sound cutting through the tense silence like a blade. My hands were shaking, but I didn't care anymore. You know what hurts the most? I said, my voice trembling between anger and heartbreak. It's not that you want my money. It's that you think I owe it to you. You think everything I've built belongs to you just because we share blood. My mom looked offended, her eyebrows knitting together. We are not saying it belongs to us, she said quickly. We are saying you should help your sister because that's what family does. I let out a bitter laugh, shaking my head. No, Mom. What you're saying is that love is conditional. That I have to buy your approval now. My dad slammed his palm on the table, his face red. Don't you dare talk to your mother like that. She's only trying to do what's right. I stared at him, the weight of years of respect and fear colliding in my chest. What's right? I repeated, my voice cracking. You think it's right to gang up on me over money? To guilt me into giving away what I've worked for? Jenna stood up too, eyes blazing with anger. Stop playing the victim, you're just being greedy. That word snapped something inside me. Greedy. I shot back. I gave when I had nothing. I supported you all without expecting anything in return. And now that I finally have something for myself, suddenly I'm the villain. My voice echoed off the walls, and for the first time, no one spoke. The sound of the fireplace crackling was the only thing that filled the silence. My throat burned, my chest tight, and I whispered, almost to myself, I can't believe I ever thought this family would be proud of me. No one said a word. The silence was thick, awkward, and heavy with unspoken judgment. I could feel every pair of eyes on me, but none of them looked like the family I grew up with. My mom's lips were pressed into a tight line, my dad's hand was still clenched on the table, and Jenna just stood there, arms crossed, glaring at me like I was a stranger who'd stolen something from her. Finally, she broke the silence. You know what? She said bitterly. Maybe Mom's right. You have changed. You used to care about people. Now all you care about is money. I laughed quietly, shaking my head in disbelief. You're wrong, Jenna. I care too much. That's the problem. I've cared my whole life, about you, about them, about everyone but myself. And look where it got me. She rolled her eyes and muttered, spare me the victim speech. My chest tightened. I looked at her, really looked at her, the same sister I grew up protecting, the same one I once shared everything with, and I barely recognized her. I'm not a victim, I said quietly. I'm just tired. Tired of being guilt-tripped for working hard, tired of pretending that love means giving everything away. My mom's eyes softened for a split second, but then she turned away, whispering, we are only trying to make things fair. I took a deep breath, my voice low but steady. Fair? You think it's fair to take what someone earned because it's easier than earning your own? That's not fairness, that's envy. No one met my eyes after that. The room felt colder, emptier. I realized that the family I had come home to wasn't the same one I'd left behind. And maybe, just maybe, that family didn't exist anymore. The tension in that room felt like it could choke the air right out of my lungs. I stared at the people I loved most in the world and saw nothing but strangers with familiar faces. Jenna scoffed and sat back down, muttering, You're unbelievable. I ignored her and looked straight at my parents. Tell me something, I said quietly. If I didn't have this money, if I was broke, struggling, barely getting by, would you still love me the same way? My mom's face went pale. My dad frowned and said, Don't be ridiculous, of course we would. But his tone wasn't convincing. It was defensive. Then why does it feel like that love has a price tag? I whispered. No one answered. The sound of the clock ticking on the wall was louder than any of them. My hands were trembling, and I shoved them into my pockets to hide it. I didn't want them to see how much this was breaking me. Do you even know what it took to get here? I continued. All those nights working 2 jobs, skipping meals, sleeping in my car, being told I'd never make it? I didn't do this for money. I did it so I could finally stop struggling. So I could have peace. Jenna sneered. Yeah, and you've got it now. Must be nice. My chest tightened, anger and sadness tangled together. You think this is peace? I said, my voice cracking. This moment, is hell. I would have given anything for your pride, your happiness, your support. But instead, all I got was resentment. My dad sighed and muttered, You're being dramatic. I took one last look at them, fighting the tears burning behind my eyes, and said softly, No. I'm just finally seeing the truth. I could feel my throat closing up, every word tasting like regret as I forced them out. You know what's crazy? I said, my voice shaking. I used to dream of moments like this, coming home, telling you I made it, seeing you proud of me. I laughed bitterly, wiping at my eyes before the tears could fall. But instead, you're sitting here, treating me like some kind of bank account with legs. My mom's eyes glistened, but her mouth stayed firm. You're overreacting, she whispered. We're just worried you've forgotten what family means. I looked at her in disbelief. Forgotten? Mom, I've spent years remembering this family. I remembered you every time I said no to myself just so I could help you. I remembered Dad when I paid his hospital bills without being asked. I remembered Jenna when I sent money for her rent. I never forgot. My dad's hand hit the table again, softer this time but still sharp enough to make me flinch. Don't throw that in our faces. You helped because you wanted to, not because you had to. His voice carried an edge, as if he was trying to take back every bit of credit I'd earned. You're right, I said, my voice steady now. I did it because I wanted to. Because I love you. But love isn't supposed to be a transaction. Jenna groaned and muttered, God, you're so dramatic. We are just asking for a little help, not your whole fortune. I stared at her, my heart aching. It's not about the money anymore, I said quietly. It's about how quickly you all stopped seeing me as your son and started seeing me as your solution. My mom finally whispered, almost too softly to hear, We just thought you'd do the right thing. I looked at her and said, Maybe I am. The room fell eerily silent after I said that. My words just hung there, heavy and uncomfortable, like a truth no one wanted to face. My mom's eyes darted away, and my dad shifted in his chair, trying to hold on to some sense of control. Jenna, though, she wouldn't back down. You think you're doing the right thing by keeping it all to yourself? She asked sharply. You're sitting on a mountain of money while your family struggles, and you call that right? I took a deep breath, trying to steady the anger bubbling inside me. No, I said slowly, I call it fair. Because I earned it. Every dollar, every cent. I bled for this, Jenna. I failed more times than I can count, but I never gave up. You could have done the same. She scoffed, rolling her eyes. Easy for you to say. You didn't have to raise 2 kids on your own. I stepped closer to the table, my voice lower but stronger now. And you didn't have to sleep in your car because you couldn't afford rent. You didn't have to get rejected by 50 investors before one finally said yes. You didn't watch everything you built crumble before you rebuilt it from scratch. Don't talk to me like I got lucky. I fought for every inch of this. My dad exhaled loudly, his patience thinning. We are not asking for everything, he said sternly. Just help your sister out. That's what a good son does. I looked at him, something cold settling in my chest. A good son. I repeated. I've been a good son my whole life, Dad. But at some point, I have to stop being the family safety net and start being a person. No one replied. They didn't like that kind of honesty. The tension was unbearable. My mom rubbed her temples like she was trying to hold the family together with sheer willpower. You're making this so difficult, she said quietly. All we are asking is that you show a little compassion. I clenched my fists, feeling the frustration crawl under my skin. Compassion. I repeated, almost laughing. Mom, compassion isn't giving away everything I've worked for because someone thinks they deserve it more. Compassion is helping when I can, not when I'm forced to. Jenna groaned, clearly losing her patience. You keep saying you've helped before, but that was pocket change compared to what you have now. You could change my life, you know that? You could give my kids a future. Her voice cracked slightly, and for a second, I saw the sister I used to know, the one who laughed with me, who shared secrets late at night. But then she looked at me again, and I saw greed drowning out every trace of warmth. I already gave you a future once, I said softly. I helped you when no one else did. But you didn't learn to build from that. You learned to depend on me. My dad slammed his hand on the table again. Enough. This is family. You don't talk like that to your sister. I turned to him, my voice breaking despite my best efforts. Then tell me what I'm supposed to do, Dad. Give up everything I've worked for just to keep the peace? Let everyone take pieces of me until there's nothing left. He glared but didn't answer. My mom's eyes filled with tears, whispering, we just want to see everyone happy. I looked around at their faces, tired and angry, and said quietly, then maybe stop treating me like the enemy for finally finding my happiness. My words hung in the air, trembling with the weight of everything I'd been holding back for years. My mom's eyes shimmered with tears, but instead of softening, she looked away like she couldn't even face me. Jenna scoffed, shaking her head, muttering under her breath, "You're so damn dramatic." That stung more than I expected. I stared at her, feeling something inside me harden. "You really think this is drama?" I said quietly. "You think I wanted this? You think I enjoy fighting with my own family on Thanksgiving?" My voice cracked, and for a second, the anger gave way to sadness. I came here hoping to feel like I belonged again, not to be treated like a stranger with a wallet. My dad sighed loudly, his tone full of disappointment. "You're making yourself the victim again. We are just trying to make you understand your responsibilities." I looked at him, utterly drained. My responsibilities? To who? To a family that only sees me as useful when I can pay for something? Because that's what it feels like. Mom finally spoke, her voice trembling. "Don't say that, you know we love you." I laughed bitterly, shaking my head. "No, Mom. You love the version of me that keeps giving. You love me when I'm fixing your problems. But the moment I set a boundary, suddenly I'm cold, greedy, selfish." Jenna's tone turned icy. "If that's how you see us, maybe you shouldn't come around anymore." The words hit me like a slap. I stared at her, completely stunned. "Maybe I shouldn't," I said softly, my voice barely above a whisper. The room fell silent again, and this time it wasn't anger that filled the air, it was heartbreak. I realized in that moment, something between us had broken for good. The silence after that felt endless, like time itself had stopped just to watch my world fall apart. My mom's hand trembled as she reached for her glass of water, her voice barely above a whisper when she said, "Don't talk like that, please. This is family. We can fix this." I wanted to believe her, I really did, but deep down, I knew she didn't understand what she was asking. "Fix this?" I said quietly. "You can't fix something that's been broken for years." My dad's eyes narrowed. "What's that supposed to mean?" I met his gaze, unflinching. "It means I've spent my whole life trying to earn your approval. I worked myself to exhaustion hoping one day you'd look at me and say you were proud. But that never happened. Now that I have money, suddenly you all care." My mom's lip quivered, and she whispered, "That's not fair." I took a shaky breath, tears burning behind my eyes. "Fair?" I repeated softly. "Was it fair when you called me selfish for chasing my dreams? When you told me I was wasting my time while Jenna got praised for doing the bare minimum? You called her responsible, but you called me reckless. And now that my so-called recklessness paid off, I'm still the villain." Jenna scoffed, crossing her arms. "Oh please, stop acting like the victim." I turned to her, my voice breaking. "I'm not the victim, Jenna. I'm just tired. Tired of being the family scapegoat. Tired of being punished for wanting something better." My dad stood up abruptly, his chair scraping the floor. "Enough. We are not doing this." I looked at him one last time, the man I used to look up to, and said, "You're right. We are not. Not anymore. Then I walked away from the table, leaving them in stunned silence. As I walked away from the table, every step felt heavier than the last. My hands were trembling, my chest tight, and my throat burned with the kind of pain that words couldn't describe. Behind me, I could still hear the faint sound of my mom quietly crying, Jenna muttering something under her breath, and my dad trying to calm everyone down. But I didn't turn back. I couldn't. I walked into the hallway and leaned against the wall, my head pounding. I wanted to scream, to cry, to punch something, anything, just to release the pressure that was crushing my chest. I had come home for warmth, for laughter, for a sense of belonging, and I left feeling like an outsider. I stared at the family photos on the wall, the ones filled with smiling faces, birthday cakes, and holidays that once meant something. I didn't recognize those people anymore. Or maybe I didn't recognize myself. The sound of soft footsteps behind me made me turn. It was Mom. Her face was blotchy from crying, her voice shaky. "Please, don't leave like this," she whispered. "We can talk." I swallowed hard. Talk about what, Mom? About how I'm a disappointment unless I'm giving you something. About how money suddenly decides who's worthy of love. She flinched, tears spilling down her cheeks. "That's not true," she said weakly. I sighed, shaking my head. "Maybe you don't mean for it to be true. But it is. You've all made it that way." She reached out like she wanted to hug me, but I stepped back. I couldn't handle it, not when my heart was already breaking. "I just need space," I said quietly. Then I grabbed my coat, opened the door, and stepped out into the cold night, leaving the warmth and the pain behind. The cold air hit me like a slap, sharp and grounding. I stood there for a moment on the porch, breathing hard, watching the steam of my breath rise into the dark sky. The quiet outside was almost too much after the chaos inside. I could still hear faint voices arguing through the walls, but they sounded far away now, like echoes of a life I didn't belong to anymore. My hands were shaking as I shoved them into my pockets, not sure if it was from anger, sadness, or just the freezing air. Maybe all of it. I walked down the driveway slowly, each step crunching on the gravel, each one pulling me further away from the home that didn't feel like home anymore. For years, I had imagined that my success would bring us closer together, that I'd finally be seen, respected, maybe even loved without conditions. But instead, it tore everything apart. I reached my car, leaned against the door, and stared up at the stars, trying to understand how things got this twisted. The worst part wasn't their greed, it was realizing that I still loved them. Despite everything they said, despite the pain they caused, I still wanted them to be proud of me. I sat in the car, gripping the steering wheel tightly, my eyes stinging with tears I refused to let fall. My phone buzzed in my pocket. It was a text from Jenna. "If you really cared, you'd help your family." I stared at the words, my chest tightening until it physically hurt. I didn't reply. I turned off my phone, started the engine, and drove away. The road ahead was dark and quiet, but for the first time in a long time, it was mine. My peace, my silence, my decision. Finally, mine. As I drove through the empty streets that night, the city lights blurred through my tears. My hands were tied on the steering wheel, and my mind kept replaying every word, every accusation, every look of disappointment from the people I once trusted most. It felt unreal, like I had just watched my own life crumble in slow motion. I wanted to believe that maybe it was just emotions running high, that tomorrow they'd call, apologize, and things would somehow go back to normal. But deep down, I knew better. Something fundamental had broken between us, something no apology could fix. I pulled over on a quiet stretch of road, turned off the engine, and just sat there in silence. For the first time in my life, I wasn't thinking about money, success, or proving myself. I was thinking about peace, what it really meant, and how much it costs to protect it. Maybe that was the lesson buried in all this pain. That sometimes the price of peace is distance, and sometimes love means walking away before it destroys you. I wiped my face, looked at my reflection in the rearview mirror, and barely recognized the person staring back. I looked tired, but lighter somehow, like I'd finally stopped fighting for approval I was never going to get. I took a deep breath and whispered to myself, "You did the right thing." It didn't feel like victory. It felt like loss, raw and real, but also necessary. As I drove away from that house, I realized that family isn't defined by blood or obligation. It's defined by love, respect, and choice. And tonight, I finally chose myself. The road stretched out before me, endless and quiet, and for the first time in years, the silence felt like freedom.